Hey, and welcome to SAP Tech Bytes. I'm Kevin Musik, and I'm a developer advocate for SAP. So in March, we got a new release with the SAP BTP SDK for iOS, and with that release, we got support for OData V4, which is amazing because with the support of OData V4, we now can connect, for example, Cloud Application Programming Model services, which are by default OData V4 services, um, to the SAP BTP SDK for iOS. And we can consume the OData service from within our application. And yeah, this is great. So today I want to show you how you would use the SAP BTP SDK for iOS to connect against such a service and how to generate the proxy classes and the complete data service layer, not only with the iOS assistant, but also with a command line tool coming together with the iOS assistant called the SAP Proxy Generator tool. So let's just dive right in. All right, if you have worked with the SAP BTP SDK for iOS before, you know that you can use the iOS assistant to generate an application for you, including the data service layer and something which is called the proxy classes. And the proxy classes are a Swift class representation of your OData service. So I've told you with the latest or with the last release from March, you can use OData V4 services in an SAP OData online context. So the offline OData currently has some limitations, which you can read through in the official documentation. But for today, we're just focusing on the online OData framework being used and the proxy class generator to generate the proxy classes in the data service layer for your application. And what I've done here is I've created an advocate service with the cloud application programming model and deployed that to the SAP BTP Cloud Foundry runtime. And you see it's running in here, advocate service on U10. And if we navigate to the advocate service itself, we can see the service document with our entity's members, skill, social media presence, and a join table members to skills. And we can also display the metadata document here, and you can see all the entities and its properties being in here. So in the SAP Mobile Services, I've created an application already called the Advocates App connecting to the OData V4 service right here. And this URL, you can see a V2. This is still using the SAP OData V2 proxy adapter you can use. So we got to change this to our V4 service. And for that, as you know, we take the service domain right here and put that in here. And we just change that URL pointing to the V4 service. Let's finish this up and let's ping it. We can see the ping was successful. We can also browse through the entities here. So it's getting the entity sets. And we can see we got some member entity and some skill entity here as well. You won't see data in here right now as the SAP HANA Cloud, where the database is lying, the HDI container is not started yet. Now we don't need that to generate our proxy classes at the moment, so we leave that out. So I'll show you both ways. If you have done or worked with the assistant before or done a couple of missions on the developers.sap.com, you know how this works. But just to walk you through real quick, we can open the SDK, SAP BTP SDK Assistant up, and we can say reuse existing application because we created the application already on mobile services. and it's using SOM to authenticate against mobile services. And we see the Advocates app being in here already. So we can say next, and we want to generate the Advocates app, and we generate that into that directory. We don't need the Mac Catalyst here. We say next, and in here we can configure the proxy class generation process. So if we edit that, we can give a service class name. So we can say this should be called the Advocates Service, and we have additional parameters here, which you can learn more in the official SAP OData reference documentation. So we say save and next, and we let it generate onboarding and master detail screens. And we say finish. What it does now, it fetches the metadata document from the service, and it generates the proxy classes and the whole project out of that metadata document. And we can see the Xcode project popping up here with a folder called proxy classes. And in there, we have the public folder, and we can see we got our representation of the defined entities. Let's just open that up and put that right next to it. So we got the members, and if we look here, we have members. We got an ID, created at, created by, first name, last name, title, and we see this whole thing being represented in the metadata document as well. So if you have an existing service, existing app already being there, and maybe you had an OData V4 service already running somewhere in the cloud, and you created the proxy classes yourself or your own data service layer, and you want to use the SAP SDK generated one now because we got the feature now, you can do this via the command line. So let's just close this Xcode project and open up the assistant again, because you have to install the command line interface tool for the proxy class generation called the proxy class generator. And you can do this by opening the assistant and going in here and just saying install tools. Because I have already installed the tools, it says tools installed, but by default, it will install the proxy class generation tools into user local bin folder. So we can just use that from the command line interface directly. So I got my iTerm right here, and I've put the command already in there. So we're saying SAP BTP SDK proxy generator -m for metadata document. We're pointing to the locally saved metadata document. So what I've done is just simply say save as, and then save the metadata document to my local file system, and pointing the tool in the CLI to that. Then I'll say -s for defining the service class name, Advocate Service, and -d for the destination where it should generate the proxy classes to, which is my legacy Advocates app. And I'm generating that into a folder called proxy classes. So I hit return, and it will recognize that I've already created proxy classes in that file, in that folder. So it's asking me if I want to delete the previously generated files, and I say yes. And we can see it's fetching, or it's taking the metadata document, it's doing its magic, and we got some proxy generations being completed. So if we open up the file system now, we should see these proxy classes being in my Advocates app, proxy classes, and then in public, I got the same thing as in the generated app, which I showed you in the Xcode project before. So we see the members being here with the ID, first name, last name, and so on. And that's another way of generating proxy classes and the data service for you using the CLI tool. And with that, I want to close today's Tech Bytes video. And I would encourage you to try out the OData V4 support with the SAP BTP SDK for iOS version 5.1 and later. and maybe connect it to a CAP service or any other OData V4 service you got running somewhere. All right, one last thing before I let you go is the Advocate service you've seen is a project of mine I'm working on. And this is a cloud application programming model service being available on Cloud Foundry, or actually deployed that on Cloud Foundry. And the Advocate service itself is the base for the Advocates app I'm actually building with the SDK and Swift UI, as well as using different UI tools and technologies from SAP to build a whole package of user interface on top of that service. So that service will not only be OData V4, it will also use the proxy um, the proxy adapter for OData V2, and it will also use the CAP capabilities of exposing a regular REST API as well. And I will use that service for later Tech Bytes videos and blog posts. So stay tuned for all the new content coming up. See you next time.